So I feel like a lot of neutral matte palettes have come out lately, and honestly, I love a good matte formula. I kind of prefer mattes over shimmers, so I've kind of been really excited about all of the matte palettes that have come out lately. However, that being said, I feel like there's so many choices that sometimes it can be difficult to choose which one to get, because if we're being honest, we don't need all of them. Now, I do have most of them. So the Danessa Myricks Groundwork's Defining Neutral Palette just recently came out, and I honestly really wanted to try it. So let's dive into it. I have swatched this, but I haven't done anything else. I haven't applied it to my eyelids. All I've done is swatched it, but I want to talk about it with you guys. Now, let's get it out of the packaging. I have to say, people have really been enjoying this packaging. I think it's just okay. I'm not really a packaging junkie though. It does come with this little separator, as well as like a plastic thing there and a little protector over the mirror. When you dip into the formula, I will say, okay, let's play with the matte a little bit. It does feel very wet. It doesn't feel like a powder, which it's technically not a powder. It's more of a putty formula. Now, I'm trying to think of one that I can compare it to, because I don't know if you've seen, like, everybody has been making videos about them like pressing into it, because it does kind of make that little dent, and it swatches and feels a little bit more putty-like. I wouldn't say that it's super wet. Clay is probably a good description, or actually a really, really good comparison would be to the Stila Heaven highlighters. Let me grab one so I can show you. I said a good comparison would be this. This one feels a little bit more wet, but it's still that putty consistency. More wet feeling, but similar. Another good comparison might be the ColourPop Super Shock Shadows. Or, oh, actually, I just thought of a really good comparison. Let me grab it. Okay, I don't know how I didn't think of this right off the bat, but the Super Shock blushes. Oh, if I can get it open. So this is actually a really good formulation. Well, actually, this is more wet too. I mean, clay might be a really good definition, because this is still a little bit more wet than the Danessa Myricks palette. Now, the powder is a lot more just like regular powder. It comes off insanely well. So, I mean, like, that's the swatch. Something that I noticed right off the bat, because I just recently bought the Patrick Ta Neutrals palette, this has nowhere near the fallout of that. However, I'm not gonna lie, I still like the Patrick Ta one better so far. I say better so far because I haven't played with this enough to really say, like, I hate that one, I love this one. But so far, I do like the Patrick Ta one better. You know what? A good definition for the creams is that it feels like a cream. A creamy putty is almost what that feels like. It's definitely really pliable, but it seems to really, really dry down. Like, I don't know if you just saw me swatch that. It was kind of, my hand was still slightly wet from wiping it off, and it kind of just smudged around. But then once they're actually on there, they don't really seem to budge a whole lot, which seems kind of nice. I'm not gonna lie though, what really intrigues me is how are they actually going to apply? Now, technically this is a face palette, and if I'm being honest, I don't really see that from this. But to give it a fair shot, I'm going to use it as a face palette. Now, I will say, I feel like it being a face palette, I should be able to dip my brush in there, but it's honestly so small that I feel like in order to like really truly call this a face palette, these pans would be bigger. I feel like it's unfair to really say like this is a face palette, because those are the size of a lot of eyeshadow pans. Like, this isn't even a big brush. This is just the e.l.f. angled brush, and it's barely going to fit in there. So I feel like that's my first thing of note, is that I'm like, if you're really going to call it a face palette, maybe this should have been bigger. But I'm going to dip into this Harvest shade, and we're going to do some underpainting and start to build out some structure for my face. Now again, normally I would start with my eyeshadow, but because I'm using this as a face palette, I'm not going to. Wow, that's actually way more than what I thought it would be. That color actually comes off really nicely, which I wasn't expecting. All right, Harvest, not bad. I still don't like the size of the pan, but it is playing really nicely. Although, okay, I have to show you guys this. So first off, the edge of my brush keeps dipping into this shade next to it, which is a little bit frustrating because, like I said, if I'm going to be able to use this as a, you know, contour palette, I want to be able to use this as an everything palette, and not being able to dip my brushes properly. I mean, I could pop these out. They're kind of meant to be able to just lift them out. And I could use it that way, but that seems like it almost defeats the purpose of having it all in one palette like this. So I'm just trying to be really careful about what I'm actually picking up here. Yeah, I feel like I'm making this so hard on myself because I'm like really trying to not dip into the other side. All right. Now that I've gotten this everywhere, and I look like a mud girl, we're gonna move on. So after I've gotten that all underpainted, I think I am gonna go ahead and do my eyes because it's gonna drive me nuts if I don't do that first before the rest. So we're just gonna ignore the fact that I do look like a little bit of a crazy person right now and put my eyes, my eyeshadow on. To be fair, putting the eyeshadow on I think is gonna be a lot easier with this. I do wanna see how things go with the brush and the cream, or on my eyes. So I'm gonna start by really deepening out that outer portion with the putty black. I don't know, like, I want to give this a really good review because I do like Danessa Myricks. I like her products. I like the innovation, but that kind of went on patchy and I kind of had to keep going. Like, do you see that? Like, no offense, but I don't want to have to work that hard to make my eyeshadow not patchy. And I know that this is a cream, but I don't know. All right, I know that I'm looking like a crazy person right now, so I'm gonna kind of clean up some of that darkness with a slightly lighter color. I'm gonna go in with this one, the powder version, and kind of smoke that out slightly. All right, well, that's smoking out nicely. I will say that that powder black, or that putty black, honestly, when I tried to apply things with a brush, they were going a little bit crazy, which I don't know how I feel about that. I'm thinking that I'm definitely going to have to fix some of that black, but maybe I'll go in with the powder instead. Ugh, I feel like I look like a crazy person right now. I do look like a crazy person right now. All right, that dark brown, I'm also going to kind of bring in. And then I'm going to lighten things up with this color right here in the center. This is the lightest color, but I'm trying to make a contrast. All right, then I'm going to take this color. I don't know, the powders seem to work a lot better on the eyes than the putty, which to me is also a strike against. I'm not really loving this eye look, but I do look a little bit crazy in general right now because I left my underpaint on to kind of dry and see what that does. So it's not a strike against it yet, but it might be moving forward. I'm gonna pop on some mascara, put on my eyebrows, and then I'll move forward. All right, I know that I technically could have done my eyebrows with this palette, but I didn't have that much faith. So I'm gonna go ahead and put on this Danessa Myricks Yummy Skin Tint. So apparently it's just a Danessa kind of day. And also, I know that this is somewhat see-through, even though it's very orange on me. So I felt like this might be a decent choice. I do hate how orange this is on me. This is turning into a hate Danessa video, even though I really don't hate her products or her makeup. It's just, you know, especially for her being like a very like dark skin friendly makeup brand, you would think that I wouldn't have to put on an orange skin tint in order to use hers, because the shade range in her skin tint kind of sucks. Like, yes, she's got very deep colors that work for me, but that is so orange. Like, I have to use so little of it to make it actually work for my skin, which is a little bit frustrating to me. You would think that if anything, it would lean more neutral. All right, now I'm gonna stop busting on Danessa. All right, I feel like I just blended out all of that. All right, now that I blended out all of my bronzer, I'm gonna put just a little bit back on, going into the same shade that I had before, and I'm just gonna lightly lightly, add just a little bit back. Now, when I tap out the edges of this, I'm going to just use, again, my Beauty Blender and just tap out the edges. All right, that's better. That's better. I don't feel like it's all gone. Oh, except for that. Did you see that just lift back up? All right, Danessa. To say that I'm very unimpressed, did you see me lift up all that product? It's all gone. Okay. Danessa, I'm really trying to like this product. I'm gonna just give up there with the bronzer because I've tried to put it on twice already and it just peeled back up again. How am I the only one noticing this? Because I've seen some other reviews that are just like loving on it, but I essentially had to get rid of it again because I just kept peeling it back up again, which that's a little bit ridiculous. All right, let's see if I can do some finishing touches, maybe on the outer and bottom corners of my eyes. I'm kind of starting to see this as more of an eye palette, and it's just not seeming to work, but I don't know that I really like the putties at all. Like they went down very patchy, and when I tried to blend them out, they came back up again, which I have to say that almost never happens to me. I'm fairly good with using different textures, so that's a little bit like, if you guys have any tips for me, that is a little bit frustrating. All right, so I'm gonna put on the rest of my makeup. I'm gonna go ahead and put on some lipstick. I'm gonna go ahead and put on a little bit of blush, and I'm gonna try to put on just a little bit of bronzer one more time just to see, and then I'll come back with some final thoughts. Honestly, so far I expected so much more from this than I've gotten. All right, I'm back. I put a little bit of bronzer, a little bit of concealer. I forgot the blush, but I do want to mention I just put on the bronzer for the third time and it went on a lot smoother just using a brush. So I think that was partially my issue, is that I kept trying to like blend out the edges with my Beauty Blender and it wasn't working. If you just put it down and blend it out with your brush, it seems to do a lot better. It doesn't seem to like a sponge very much, which I use my sponge for everything, so I'm not sure that I can really get on board with that, but that did seem to stop the spottiness that was happening. All right, because it was a Danessa kind of day, I did put on the Danessa Myricks Yummy Skin blush. All right, I do want to give you my final thoughts on this palette. I love a all matte palette. Here's the thing with this one. There's a few things that I can't quite get past, and maybe that's partially a learning curve. Maybe I just don't like this formula. In reality, I think that it's probably a combination of both. So first things first, this is supposed to be a full face palette. Although this texture is very, very interesting, I found that the cream went on patchy on my eyeballs, or at least the black did. And so then I actually found that to be the case with the cream that I kept on trying to use as the bronzer too, which is part of the reason that I kept trying to blend it out with a Beauty Blender. So the creams I feel like go on a little bit patchy, and I don't love that. Number two, for a full face palette, you can't tell me that that is big enough to really dip your brush into. And if I remove it, like if I remove these little guys like they're kind of meant to, I feel like that kind of defeats the purpose of Holly having it all in one. Also, look at this little guy. It's so shallow. Again, the texture of this is very, very interesting. I kind of did like the powders a little bit more. I think that they went on a lot more even, although I will say I kind of struggled with this formula a little bit, just in general. I think that if you have better luck than me, you might love this color story, because I think that this color story is very, very good. Like, it is nicely curated. Maybe if you were just using this for something like your eyebrows or something like that, you might like this a little bit better. I'm really struggling with this. If you guys had a different experience or you have some ideas of how to better use this, I'm all ears, but I've never had such a hard time working with an eyeshadow palette, and that includes creams, powders, glitters, shimmers, everything. I am 100% a makeup junkie, and I was really struggling to get this to perform the way that I expected and the way that I was told it would perform. So that being said, I think that this one is maybe one that you should probably skip. It just didn't give me what I wanted it to give me, and I don't want you guys to be disappointed. If you're interested, I'm thinking about filming a comparison between the Danessa Myricks, the Patrick Ta, and the Makeup by Mario Master Mattes palette, because I think that might be a very interesting comparison. So if you're interested in watching something like that, let me know. But honestly, even as is, I don't think that these two really compare to each other. Let me know what you thought of the Danessa Myricks palette. Go ahead and like and subscribe if you like videos like this. Bye!